Welcome. I'm Julie Thompson, Executive Director of pac-TV, and today we're hosting a COVID-19 update for the town of Kingston. We'll hold these forums every Tuesday and Friday at 10:30, except for next Tuesday because that's election day for the special election for the Senate seat, so we won't have a forum next Tuesday. We'll have our next one on Friday the 22nd at 10:30. You can watch these forums in Kingston on Comcast Channel 15 or Verizon Channel 42, or watch online on our streaming channel by visiting pactv.org/live. To ask questions during today's forum, please email them to kingstoninfo@pactv.org. And for the forum replay schedule and additional Kingston meeting coverage, please visit pactv.org/Kingston. Today's participants include Fire Chief Mark Douglas, the Plymouth County Commissioner Dan Pallotta, and of course, our host, Josh Warren, who is the chair of the Kingston Board of Selectmen. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, Julie. Thank you for organizing this, and as always, thank you for continuing to allow Kingston the opportunity to speak to residents twice weekly through this platform. I'm just going to give a couple of really brief updates, and then I want to turn it over to our guests. Mark's going to chat with us about Kingston's plans to reopen town facilities, and Commissioner Pallotta is going to talk to us about the CARES Act and what that means for Kingston being part of Plymouth County. So just a really quick update. Yesterday afternoon, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health announced there were 6,744 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Plymouth County. That was an increase of 182 from the previous day. And as of yesterday afternoon, the town of Kingston's total number of confirmed positive cases remained at 72. So our numbers are still fairly low when you look at some of the surrounding communities. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that residents have been practicing social distancing, good hygiene, and really paying attention to the Commonwealth stay-at-home advisory. So that's certainly appreciated as we try to mitigate the further spread of COVID-19 in the town of Kingston. And with that, I want to jump right into chatting with Fire Chief Mark Douglas. This past week, Mark, along with Arthur Boyle, Kingston's health agent, Brad Norman, Kingston's facilities manager, and Chris Woods, a representative from the Kingston Town Employees Union, started meeting to plan a phased reopening of Kingston's buildings and facilities. So, Mark, can you just give us a brief overview of who it is that you're working with on the plan to reopen?
Sure. The task force consists of myself, Deputy Chief Adam Hatch, Facilities Director Brad Norman, Head Custodian Chris Woods, Tina Betty, our Human Resources Director, as well as Arthur Boyle, our Health Agent. We have met twice now to begin the process of opening town buildings.
Great, thank you. And what have you learned so far in the process?
Well, what we've learned, I mean, I do have to give a shout out to our employees. We have some fantastic employees that are willing to give 100%, whether it's a phone call to talk about their office processes or what they believe they're going to need in terms of tangible items to return to work, such as PPE. So I give them a big shout out for their participation in this when we call on them. What we've learned so far is that we're going to have to spend a little time, planning the tangible items, the PPE, the screens, the processes that we use just simply to enter the town buildings and to keep social distancing in place. So there are some items that we're going to have to order. We've worked with Brad and Chris on that, and we expect that within a couple of weeks, those items that we've determined are immediately necessary will be available to us.
And can you just provide a brief overview of the plan thus far?
Sure. The plan is to get those items that we've discussed in PPE, screens, et cetera, that will keep the distance between the public and the employees. In addition to that, we've asked the employees to come in on a scheduled basis, and we'll go through, or Brad and Chris will go through the offices with them. They know their workflow best, so therefore we have them meet with Brad, meet with Chris. Chris is also the union rep, which is very helpful. And they talk about the processes and the needs that they'll have in order to implement actually the social distancing plans as well as future customer service.
That's great. And I chatted with a few folks in the townhouse yesterday, and I know Gloria in the selectman's office was happy to see that some of the reorganizing of desks has already happened, and I know they've moved some physical workspaces just to I guess adapt to what we'll probably be looking at once we reopen, knowing that COVID-19 is still out there in the community. What does the timeline look like for reopening?
Some of the timeline, honestly, is not specific as of yet. I think next week, probably mid to late next week, we'll have a better timeline for two reasons. One, we'll know when some of those items that we ordered will be available to us, hopefully within the next 7 to 10 days, Brad suggested. The second is on Monday, the governor will announce his plans for reopening the Commonwealth in general. So we really can't move forward without the governor's plan in place. That's our feeling, at least at this point. So next Monday, we'll see that. Next Wednesday, we have a meeting planned so that we can be updated by Brad and facilities on what is available and when. And then we can move forward with an actual timeline. I hate to sound like we're kicking the can down the road, but truly there is some information from the state that is necessary for us to be moving forward with the actual implementation of the plans to put people back in the building.
Great, and I think it's probably worth noting too that while we're seeing some towns really race to reopen, Kingston's in a somewhat unique position because a lot of the work was done at the front end of this pandemic to purchase licenses and technology and to train staff and allow them to work remotely. So I don't think that we're really missing a beat by having town facilities closed for a little bit longer just to ensure that we get this right.
No, at the outset of this, the reopening task force is what we've been calling it. We all said that we wanted to do this right, not do this quick. And certainly there'll be a point that I think we can move fairly quickly once we get our supplies, once we get our plans in place, and we simply implement the plans and then invite the public back into the building. When we do invite the public back into our buildings, though, there will be some ground rules. And I think that's important to note. There'll be some signage that says what they should and shouldn't do when they're in the building. And that signage will go along with the directives from the governor and just the best practices of social distancing, hand washing, wearing masks, and so forth until the point comes in months or whatever the time frame may be that we're allowed to slowly back away from doing that and resume some type of normal activity.
And in terms of physical layout, I mean, is there anything that would be worth sharing with residents, just so when they do come back into the building to conduct business, they're not taken back by what they see? I mean, what can folks expect to see in the buildings once we are in a position to reopen and welcome the public back?
A few things I think they'll see in the building that will be a little different. Much of it will be very much the same. But we are going to establish travel paths, in other words, direct traffic, so to speak, so that people can maintain the 6 foot distances. They'll most likely see some footprints on the floor for where you can stand for offices, some signage in regards to their behavior, one or two or three people in the bathroom, or things such as that. Simple directives that help us maintain that distancing and cleanliness that we need so that we don't cause a recurrence of this virus.
And do you mind just briefly chatting about those glass screens that we're ordering and hoping to install?
Sure. The screens that we're discussing, for anybody that's ever been in a police station, typically there's a screen or a blockage between you and the person on the other side of the counter, and that's the extreme. Most of theirs are bulletproof, knife proof, and so forth. What we're trying to do is establish a plexiglass screen, and we call it a screen, between the customer, the public, and the employee, just in case there are infected folks that are infected that don't know it from the public. Perhaps they wear a mask, perhaps they forgot one or took it off or slid it down or something. It protects the employee from any droplets that might be expelled from the individual that they're dealing with. And that plexiglass screen could be anywhere from a foot wide to 3 feet wide. Some of them are. They'll be placed on the counters so that the employee can interact with the civilian, the customer, without danger to themselves. And there's an area under that screen that you can slip documents and items so that you're not totally impersonal, so you don't have to email everything. So there can be some interaction with each other, but it will just be with a divider there to prevent infection.
Great. Well, Mark, I appreciate you joining us and giving everybody sort of a brief overview of what you're working on. I mean, it's incredibly important work, and as Kingston looks to again invite employees back into the workplace and invite the public back in to conduct business. I certainly appreciate everything that you're doing on that team, and please extend our thanks to everyone else. If you don't mind just sticking around, I think we may have some questions that come in, but I'm gonna jump on over and chat with Commissioner Pallotta. But if you can hold tight, that would be great.
That sounds great.
Um,
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pallotta. I'm really excited to have you with us today. There's been some really exciting news in the townhouse and among department heads and town employees who've been looking at some of the expenses that Kingston's incurred as a result of COVID-19. And there is some relief on its way, and that's coming in the form of the Federal CARES Act. And I'm wondering, can you just give viewers at home a high level view of what the CARES Act is?
I can do that, sure. In a nutshell, the CARES Act is a multi-trillion-dollar program that was passed. I think they called it Phase Three by the Congress to immediately respond to COVID-related expenses. It encompasses a lot of things. One of the things in the CARES Act is $150 billion to direct aid to states, tribal units, and cities and counties that are 500,000 people or more. The county of Plymouth is one of those counties that was eligible for funds. We applied for the funds and we received $90,974,000 in change. So we're going to be administering those funds directly to the cities and towns. The funds are not to be used for replacement of lost revenue. The funds are to be used for actual expenses related to COVID, which are mounting in every one of our cities and towns. One of the reasons that we took the money as opposed to just ignoring it and letting it default to the state was we couldn't get a guarantee from the Commonwealth that all 90 million would stay in Plymouth County. So the monies that we receive are 45% of the monies that are allocated to the population of the county of Plymouth. County of Plymouth actually received $202 million. 55% automatically goes to the Commonwealth, and 45% is eligible for the county to distribute.
Great. And can you just give us an idea of what some of the eligible expenses will be and what some of the ineligible expenses may be?
I can do that. I'm going to just quickly pop up a couple of slides if that would make it easier, Josh,
Great. Thank you.
if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I think that would probably be easier. This is a slide program that we had done for the administrators, and portions of it have been seen by the actual elected representatives in the county legislature, which you are one of, which is called the advisory board. So I'm going to just quickly toggle through if I can figure out how to do that. The CARES Act basically runs from March 1st to December 30th. We expect that the cities and towns are going to have a second wave. I think you're starting to hear a lot about that at the national level. I think the governor's worried about it. We're worried about it, and we want our cities and towns to be prepared for it. These monies can be used for anything related to COVID. Ineligible, eligible, and ineligible expenses is basically this slide here. The eligible is a cost incurred when the responsible unit of government has been expended the funds to cost. So if the fire department had expenses related to COVID, it's an eligible expense. If the health department had expenses related to COVID, it's an eligible expense. So there's a list of eligible expenses and ineligible expenses in this program that we have given to the cities and towns. They break down into 6 major categories: medical expenses, public health expenses, payroll expenses for additional employees, overtime, etc. Expenses related to distance learning for the schools. If the Kingston Elementary School has to buy iPads for everybody, that's an eligible expense. Anything related to distance learning is an eligible expense. So there's a whole list of things that are eligible. Expenses related to economic support and any other expense. This is the one I love. Any other COVID-19 relative expense necessary to the function of government to satisfy the fund's eligibility criteria. Pretty broad, but it's basically you can use the funds for COVID related. You cannot use the funds to build a addition to the townhouse. You can't use the funds to pave a road. You can use the funds related to COVID-19. Ineligible, state share of Medicaid, damages by insurance, payroll benefits, not substantially dedicated to COVID-19, and expenses under any other federal program. If Mark is probably a student of FEMA and has applied to FEMA in the past for storm emergencies, if you apply to Plymouth County, you'll get 100% within a week. If you apply to FEMA, you can't then apply to FEMA and try and double dip. We'll all go to jail if you do that, Mark. So we don't want you to do that. But if you apply to FEMA, you'll get 75%, 3 or 4 years down the road. So you can't use the same receipts for two different governmental programs. Reimbursement for donors, you can't use it for that. So if someone's donated time, masks, you can't then come to Plymouth County and say, hey, we want money for our donors. Other than no workforce bonuses. If the board of selectmen wants to get generous with their employees and hand out bonuses, they're not eligible. Hazard pay is eligible and overtime's eligible. Bonuses are not. Severance pay and legal settlements are not eligible.
Now, Dan, if I can just chime in briefly. So aside from the guarantee that this money will stay in Plymouth County, and as you just said, with FEMA, you may be looking at receiving a check for 75% many years down the road. What are some of the other advantages of having Plymouth County be the I guess the custodian of these funds and the one doling these out to the 27 cities and towns within the county?
So one of the things I think that is an advantage is the fact that you just picked up the phone last night and said, Dan, do you mind going on TV and explaining it to the residents of Kingston? I think you'd be hard pressed to find a state official to be able to answer the questions, never mind come on and try and help educate your staff. I think when we were before we went on the air, you had indicated Tom had already been talking to your staff, treasurer, and that local touch is really important. And we have 27 towns that we're giving that local touch to. If they have a problem, they pick up the phone and call us, and we'll answer the phone and we'll try to get them the help that they need. It's our goal to get all $90,945,729.80 to Plymouth County. We want to make sure that all of it goes to the county, not a portion of it, all of it. I can tell you that we weren't given that guarantee from the Commonwealth, and that this share of the money is only 45% of the share that was given to our region. So we know the state's going to be doing some things above and beyond the county of Plymouth.
That's great. And you mentioned that the turnaround for reimbursement would be quick. How soon can cities and towns start applying for these funds?
So we had a call yesterday with the administrators, and we told them that we thought we'd be ready to start accepting applications next week, or as early or as late as the following week. I'm almost 99% certain it'll be next week that we'll start accepting applications and reimbursements, and cities and towns that get them in, as soon as they're reviewed, a check's going to go out. We expect a turnaround in less than 2 weeks.
That's incredible. I mean, hearing from Mark,
the funds are in our account, so there's no bureaucracy here, which is one of the reasons we thought it would be better doing this. The funds are in the county's account. They've been in the county's account for a week or so, and we don't want to hold on to them. They're your money. They're not our money. The county's not hiring any people. The county's not taking a percentage, even though we're allowed to. We want all of these funds to go to the 27 cities and towns.
That's great. Dan, is there anything else in that slideshow that you want to share briefly while it's up?
There's so much on this slideshow. I think it'd all go crazy if I read everything. It's a lot of FAQs. It's really how we got the money and how the state got 2.6 billion. Plymouth County's taken 90 million of the 2.6 billion to make sure that it gets to our cities and towns. This is a breakdown of what we're anticipating the cities and towns will apply for between now and the end of the fiscal year. One of the reasons we took the money is we were afraid that money wouldn't be distributed before June 30th, and all the town's free cashes would be whacked. And we know you won't be whacked because we're going to get your receipts that we receive out to you before the end of the fiscal year, so that your certified free cash in October and November won't be hit. And we're doing this what we're calling phase one. We're doing this on a population basis, not on a need basis, but it'll be a need basis on the receipts. Kingston's eligible for $586,478.30. Do I think Kingston's going to apply for that much? Probably not. And those funds will go to the next phases that we're going to be administering. But this fund will stay here, and you'll be able to continually request funds related to COVID all the way through December 30th, 2020.
Now, Dan, if you can just leave that slide up, I have one question about the phases. So my understanding is that there's going to be 3 rounds of funding available through this program. The first
yeah,
last.
I think I said 3 rounds when I talked with the administrators, and it just popped in my head. There's not really a set number of phases. What there is a tremendous amount of data and things that this can be used for. Some of it's private. We're going strict municipal in phase one because we believe the intent is municipal. But there was a couple of lines in there that are private related, and we want to make sure that our cities and towns are whole before we go down that route on the private. The commissioners will adopt the policy of where the next few phases go, whether it's 1 phase, 2 phases, 5 phases. We have till December 30th, but I can guarantee you your board of commissioners, all 3 of us are dedicated to getting all 90,945,000 to the county residents.
Okay, Dan, if you don't mind bringing your headshot back up, I think
Sure.
I think we're. There we go.
They have to see me.
Good to see you again, Dan. Well, I for one am right there with you. I mean, I'm really grateful that you guys are as accessible as you are. I know that we have some folks in our town administration who do have, the contacts at the state level where they can pick up the phone and ask a question. But
Sure.
Knowing that our commissioners are a phone call away, knowing that the county treasurer is a phone call away, and knowing that checks are potentially a few weeks away, certainly gives me great comfort going into what's going to be a very difficult time for us in balancing our budget with all of these expenses. So, Julie, I'm not sure, have we had any questions come into the studio?
We have a couple. One about the usage of the CARES Act funds for the towns. If the towns can't use this for anything but COVID-19 related reimbursement, do you foresee that funds will be available in the future for towns to augment the fact that they're not getting their income, whether it's through taxes or whatever it is?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. Whoever gave us the question, that's revenue replacement. That is explicitly excluded in the federal law. That doesn't mean the federal law can't be amended by Congress. Also doesn't mean that we're not going to get additional guidance. We've already had guidance changed, and we've already had frequently asked questions change. You'll see my slides have different colors, and that's different levels of changes that we've received from the federal government. We want to track the changes too. So if someone saw a PowerPoint that was all white, we know when you saw that PowerPoint. If you see some of the pink slides, we know when you saw it, and we'll be adding different colors as we add additional information. The county will be eventually setting up a web page with distribution of the funds, where the funds are going, how they're being allocated, and what the next phases will be as determined by the commissioners.
And a follow-up on that same type of question, as far as being utilized for COVID-19 expenses, schools, for example, if schools are allowed to open in September and over the summer, all kinds of different mitigations are put into place and those cost money, that will also be able to be the funds that you've secured for each town through the this whole
So
program can be used for that
So
too?
if it's COVID related, it's going to be reimbursable.
Okay.
If it's not COVID, if it's standard maintenance that they're doing, it's not going to be reimbursable.
Right.
If it's something specifically related to COVID, it's reimbursable.
Okay.
You know, meals, feeding students during the pandemic, because some of our districts are feeding students even though schools closed. Some of that's reimbursable. So there's a lot of little odds and ends in this act that are reimbursable. Anything related to remote learning it's specifically spelled out as reimbursable. Some of the towns don't have remote laptops and iPads
Right.
and things of that nature. This act through the County of Plymouth will allow them to get their students up to par and continue the learning that they do so well in person.
That's wonderful. Also, a quick question, also piggybacking off that, is for town meetings, that clearly this is a huge issue for all of the towns in the county. How do you hold them? How can you do it with mitigation and keeping people separate? Is there any guidance being given on funding that could be used to help, whether it has to be done remotely via some other platform, or if some place has to be rented out that's huge that can be used for a town meeting, would that also be considered reimbursable because it's COVID-19 related?
If the function of government is rendered necessary by COVID-19, it would be reimbursable.
Okay.
That's how it reads. Specific questions like that, which really kind of border into a different zone. We've asked the administrators to send in writing the questions, and we've got a legal team going through all of the requests to make sure that all the towns get the answers to every town's question. So if the town of Kingston asks a question, 26 other towns are going to have the benefit of the town of Kingston's question.
That's wonderful. So do you suggest that the towns?
What we suggest is that all the town departments work through their administration
Yep.
and their chief executive boards. The funds are going to be going to the chief executive boards,
Okay.
which in Kingston would be the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So they should really funnel everything through their Board of Selectmen, so there's a single point of contact with the county, and then the county will get the answers back to them.
And maybe thinking outside the box, one town might come up with an idea that another town hadn't thought of, and
Yeah,
Wouldn't that be
that's why
helpful?
we want to keep the communication going.
Yeah.
One of the things we heard loud and clear from the advisory board meeting we had about a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now, was that the advisory board members wanted to hear communication often, which is why we had a meeting with the administrators yesterday to let them know it's coming. We are literally working between the treasurer and the county commissioners 12-hour days to get this program out the door, including weekends. And we want them to know what's going on so they can take maximum benefit from it. And I'm sure they're going to have questions and comments on what the remainder of the money should be used for too. It's pretty clear in the act what it can be used for. What gets priority, I think, there'll be a little debate on.
And are these funds all guaranteed, the amounts that we saw on that last slide you had brought up?
So the commissioners have set aside the 25% just to get it out of the ground. If a town goes over 25%, I'm sure that the commissioners are going to find a way to fund it. I don't think any of the towns will go over the 25%, with the exception of possibly Brockton. I mean, Brockton's in a battle zone right now. They've got people dying over there, and they need help. And their costs are mounting pretty high. So some of the more remote towns don't have the same cost, even though by population, you would think it would be simple just to dish it out by population. I don't see this being a straight up population division. I see it being a needs-based division. But in the first round, we did it by population to let everyone know approximately what we think is available immediately.
Okay, and there's one final question. and it's about the fact that the money was, you said you applied for it, Plymouth County applied for it. If the county had not applied for these funds, would have these funds not been available directly to each town within the county?
So if the county didn't apply for the money, the 90 million would default to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Okay.
So I can't tell you what the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is doing.
Would have done, okay.
They issued guidance for the other 323 towns. There's 351 towns. We have 27. And the city of Boston also took money directly because they were over 500,000. We weren't the only ones. Bristol and Norfolk also applied, but there was a lot of pressure put on the counties to return the money. The county of Plymouth chose not to. The other two counties chose to. So Boston and Plymouth are excluded from what the state's doing.
Okay.
They may implement this a little different than the county of Plymouth, but I do think that the county of Plymouth is going to, with regard to the 45% share that we've received, you'll get all of it. And I can't guarantee that you'll get all of it through the Commonwealth.
Okay. And all this information is available on your website?
Not yet.
Okay. It will be?
Our websites, believe it or not, in March, we started down the path of redoing our website with Civic Plus, which does most of the cities and towns in Massachusetts. That has not been completed as of yet. We're working on getting that completed. We've been hit by COVID also.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our staff has been hit hard by COVID, and we can't, we have to play catch up on some of these things like updating the website and things of that nature. Right now, we're focusing 100% on getting the funds out the door.
Sure.
And communicating directly with the administrators and the boards of selectmen on how that's going to occur. Since it doesn't involve the public, as long as the 27 member units are in constant contact with us and are updated by us, the website is just a pretty picture.
Okay, so the select boards in each of the towns have that PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, they do.
Okay, perfect. Okay, that's the only questions I had so far, Josh.
Great, and I can say that every selectman in Kingston had that in their inbox yesterday. So Dan is speaking the truth.
I hope.
Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. And again, it's this level of attention that I am really thrilled about, and certainly knowing that money is going to stay in the county, and that Kingston will be seeing some relief shortly. Thanks, bud.
Looks like my webpage.
Yeah, this is working from home with a 5-year-old, and it's we're having a lot of fun with that.
That's far more important than this.
Yes. But I do appreciate you coming on and not only speaking to us, but speaking to everybody that's at home. And I look forward to working with you, the other commissioners, Treasurer O'Brien, and the rest of your staff throughout this pandemic. And certainly, again, appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
And the selectmen know they can call any of the commissioners. All of us are available. This is not a one commissioner or just the treasurer. It's truly a team effort. So we're excited to be here, and we're excited to serve Kingston and the other 26 communities.
Thank you. Mark, any parting words before we sign off?
Yeah, just a couple. For the public who's obviously watching this, we're going to try to get this right. We truly are. There'll be some hiccups. We know that. There may be some questions. We know that. So when the time comes that we invite the public back into our buildings, we hope that they'll work with us, provide us the input necessary so we can make the adjustments we need, and provide for our employees to be safe and productive at work, as well as provide for the citizens to be comfortable in our buildings again.
Thank you. And Julie, just before we sign off, headed into the weekend, I just want to take the opportunity once again to thank all of the Kingston residents who've been practicing social distancing, proper hygiene, use of facial coverings, and really just working hard over the last 60 days to mitigate the spread of, or the potential spread of COVID-19 in Kingston. But I also want to thank the residents who've been visiting our website and staying informed. Earlier this week, the Assistant Town Clerk, Diane Poirier, ran analytics on Kingston's website and found that during a 1-month period between April 12th and May 12th, there were 198,000 views of Kingston's COVID-19 page on the website. So that was 61% of the overall web traffic. So folks are paying attention, folks are getting informed. And as Mark said, in the coming weeks, we hope to be sharing more about our phased reopening plans. So I just want to encourage everybody who has been using the town website for that local information to continue visiting www.kingstonmass.org for daily updates. We're certainly committed to keeping that website updated and useful. And with that, Julie, I'll hand it over to you and look forward to seeing you a week from today.
And I had one more question for Mark. You're going to be getting more guidance on the 18th from the governor. Is that correct? As far as more specifics about opening of your not only town buildings but all of businesses?
The governor has said that statewide, he will release the phase plan, more specifics on the 4-phase plan that the state currently has on Monday, the 18th. So we await those. Based on those bits of guidance, or those plans, I should say, we'll move forward with some direction on how to open our buildings and specifically when to open our buildings.
Excellent, thank you. And also, please do keep in mind that next Tuesday is Election Day. It's a voting day for the state Senate. I'm going to bring up, and I got this from the website, thank you, the information about voting for next Tuesday is available from your main page on the website. It tells you where to go, who's on the ballot, how to vote. The question is it, thank you, Control Room, is it too late now to vote by mail? I mean, it's Friday and the election is Tuesday. Maybe
I honestly
Josh?
don't know. That would be a question for Paul Gallagher, and I know that office will be staffed for at least the next 45 minutes, so I'd encourage anyone who does have a burning question about elections to reach out to the clerk's office sometime before noon.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you. This was really very, very interesting today. A lot of really great information. We'll see you next Friday at 10:30 for the Kingston COVID-19 update. We'll probably have a ton of more information because the governor would have released his more specific instructions about reopening, more guidelines. We'll know about the election, how that went over. So a week from today, we'll have a lot more information. So if you want to watch this show again, it's pac-tv.org/Kingston. Thank you all very much. Have a safe and wonderful weekend.